Oh, hello there. Yes, well, we made it to Friday. In particular, I made it to Friday. Dear God, yesterday was an appalling day. There are some times and some days on my work when I'm not a fan of children. It's a bit like people in my comments. I feel the same way about them as well. Anyway, yes, it was an odd one. I found myself shockingly reading something by Brendan O'Neill that I agreed with. You can tell it's like moss growing on a south-facing wall. It's just unnatural. Anyway, there was this. Link down below. The last thing Britain needs is Trump's free speech imperialism. The White House meddling in British cancel culture could make it even worse. Yeah, I mean, apart from these sort of drift into slagging off lefties, because after all, there is nothing like a sinner repented, eh? But just to quote him on this, more to the point, it's an intolerable intrusion into our sovereign affairs for America to tie free trade to free speech. It's a clear stab at interference in the internal matters of an independent state. Ours. I detest our culture of censorship. I also detest the idea that it's a duty of a distant power to compel us to dispense with it. The former is an assault on our right to self-government, on the liberty of every Briton to speak as he or she or it presumably feels fit. But the latter is an assault on our right to democratic government, on the freedom of Britons to determine the fate of the nation free from external pressure. I want to restore the sovereignty of the individual in the UK, not at the expense of the sovereignty of the nation. Yes, indeed, which a lot of our commentariat, the rest of them, can't seem to get their heads round, because a lot of the British media are still banging on about how, well, isn't it just chuffing great that Brexit happens, which means that we can kowtow to the Americans as opposed to anyone else. And, the problem with this whole thing about, the tariffs, of course, is that there is an astoundingly good chance that they won't exist beyond, say, the end of April, tops. Because with the stock market tanking, in particular, Nvidia et al., the tech brothers, shares tanking, they will start to scream and jump up and down. Now, you can argue X, Y, and Z about whether or not you like Donald Trump, but he's not our president, and I don't have to feel, living in this country, that I should be at the whims or diktat of a foreign power. But, the pro-Brexit lot, of course, are solidly into that, which brings us, of course, neatly on to Nigel Farage. And I did have to smile at his another election launch. Again, that notion of youthquake. I mean, this is actually a staged photograph, and you may notice, yes, there may or may not be a person under 45 in that photo. They rounded these people up as the best representative, DEI initiatives, etc., that they could get. And this is the most representative bunch that they do. You may notice that the exact number of ethnic minority types in there is, well, as far as I can make out, exactly a big fat zero. It's something when you can't even get one. They might hire some actors or something, I don't know. Anyway, from my local area, we've got Farage saying, Farage says reform would make cuts in Cambridgeshire, which is really good, isn't it? Yeah. Apparently he's going to cut out government waste, which is the way that all of the reform candidates are going to make everything work. I mean, despite the fact that councils are basically essentially bankrupt and have been for about the last 5 to 10 years, makes no odds. Apparently it's just a reform thing that they can sort out. And it's yet another selling us yet another lie on the basis that maybe if we just spend less money on your local services in order to shore up the tax cuts for the rich, that everything will work out. Maybe it will. But I seem to recall that that's effectively what, Margaret Thatcher argued for, and what John Major argued for, and what, in a large part was represented by the Blair and Brown administration. Then, of course, we had David Cameron, who had to make huge cuts to the local government because, that isn't going to work. Still, at least then we had Theresa May, who was just like Margaret Thatcher, wasn't she? Remember that? Strong and stable, just like Margaret Thatcher, going to make cuts into things because obviously, we need tax cuts for the rich, which definitely are going to work out, except they didn't, of course. But then we had Boris Johnson, didn't we, who was seriously going to make Brexit work, and seriously made Brexit work back on the back of a huge majority which Nigel Farage handed to him. Yeah, don't worry about the candidates, they can just be left in the cold. Still, let's forget about that, eh? And here we are with our Brexit sovereignty, superb, eh? Yeah, but there's no money left for anything at all because, of course, there was the whole COVID thing, which Boris Johnson, one way or another, managed to make even worse. One of the highest death rates in Europe, let's not forget. Yes, but of course we couldn't have Boris Johnson because, he was a bit useless, so we had to have Liz Truss. Oh, thank God for that. Yes, with her extremely good tax cuts for the rich model. Yes, which didn't quite work out, but then, of course, it didn't work out because she was a bit useless. We had to have Rishi Sunak, who was definitely going to do all of those things that everybody wanted them to do, like stopping the boats, except he didn't. And now we have Keir Starmer, of course, who was going to do, well, nothing, because that's the modern Labour Party for you. Yeah, you see, I'm not a Labour Party supporter, really dislike our current government in perhaps ways that are even more vitriolic than they might be towards a Tory incumbent. Yes. Still, never mind, eh? We can always have just Nigel Farage coming in and promising to, cut the last library in your area, or maybe sell off the last park, because maybe somehow that'll make things work, eh? Yes. Yes, even as we speak, certain of the think tanks in the UK, like the Adam Smith Institute, are starting to suggest that maybe the current economic stuff that's going on might be a bad idea. And it's coming to something when the folks at Tufton Street and elsewhere are a little bit worried and are having to say things rather than simply the mantra that somehow we can cut our way out of a recession. Farcical nonsense. Even Brendan O'Neill would agree. Dear God. There'll be black seagulls flying at night next. Portents. Evil portents, I tell you. Signs and... Ooh, could it be the end times? No, it's Easter. Anyway, have a lovely one. Do may enjoy your start to the weekend. I know I've earned it.